In this video, I'm going to be removing the seats from my Smart Fortwo 451. Before we get underway with this video, it's important to state that car seats contain sharp, often sprung-loaded metal parts which can cause injury. They also often contain airbags. I can't stress enough the importance of taking extreme care when working with car seats. I'm always very careful, and if anyone's in any doubt about their ability to carry out such a task, they should really entrust a qualified automotive technician. Now, if you're serious about really cleaning the interior of your Smart, the best way to do it is to completely remove the two seats. That way you can really access the carpet underneath and all those really difficult to access nooks and crannies. You can also lift up the carpets, because for some reason on these cars there is a surprising amount of gravel and grit and bits that's built up under the carpet. Now, I think that that's largely because, unlike most cars, the edge of the carpet there is visible and it's not protected by a cover like a sill trim that you often get on cars. So dirt can get down there. It does find its way all across here. It is abrasive, and it's just nice to know that the car's really clean, and not just nearly clean. God, that sounds like a terrible 1980s advert. Now, my vehicle is not equipped with side airbags in the seats here, which makes it somewhat easier. Had it have had side airbags, I'd have needed to disconnect the car battery before disconnecting the connector block under here for the wiring to the airbag. Failure to disconnect the battery would mean the vehicle would detect a fault, it would trigger a fault code, bring a light on the dashboard, which would need resetting. So that's unnecessary. It can be prevented. But in this instance, the only electrical connector I'll have to disconnect will be for this seat belt buckle. You can see under here there is the wiring, so I just won't switch the ignition on while that's disconnected. So the main tools to do the job, you'll need a 17mm spanner and a T45. So the first thing to do is to unbolt this 17mm bolt here, which holds the seat belt in place. It's important to note how this seat belt is fitted, how it passes through here for refitting. This stitched seam here should be on the inside when you refit it. If it's correct, it should pass across the body like automatically like this, with this buckle the correct way round. Quite often they're twisted. I've moved the seat forward to improve access. You will see there's the bolt, a washer, and then a little retaining washer as well. It's important that that all stays together. At this point, you need to remove the seat belt from this little guide. And now the seat belt's disconnected. Now, there are two ways to remove these seats. You can either remove the seat with this front frame, or you could technically remove the seat and leave this frame in place. So this bolt here retains the seat to the frame. I'm just going to remove the bolts that secure the frame at the front. There are two under these little flaps of carpet, and then at the back of the car you've got two bolts, the T45s, that need to be removed. So that's the two rear bolts removed. These are the shorter bolts, and you'll see what I mean when I remove the front ones. So lifting up these little flaps of carpet here exposes the bolts here at the front of the seat. As you'll see, these are the longer bolts. The seat is now free from the car, with the exception of the wire. So the seat can be tilted back, and in doing so you will see that there are some spacers here at the front which can be removed. Now the spacers obviously go with the long bolts. This little connector here under the seat needs to be disconnected. It really is just a case of pushing in this little tab and disconnecting. There are a couple of clips, one on the base of the seat here, that need to be removed. It's important to remember that this wire passes over that little bar, and now the only thing holding it is this clip, and that's disconnected. This seat can now be removed from the car. It's important to take care when lifting it out not to damage the tritium. There are some metal protrusions on the seats and it's very easy to catch this bodywork on the way out. So as you can see, the areas where the dirt builds up, I have hoovered this car, and these are the areas I couldn't get to. Now lifting up this carpet, this isn't actually too bad on this one. I've seen a lot worse than this, but I will be giving this all a good clean. Some random screw there as well, I have no idea what that's for. I'll look into that. And next I'm going to remove this other seat. So here we are on the passenger side. A couple of differences. First of all, there's no wiring to this seatbelt buckle, so I'm guessing that it's the passenger's personal responsibility to ensure they have their seatbelt on rather than there being a warning. And in terms of the bolts, on this side the short ones are at the front without the spacers, and the longer bolts are at the back with the spacers. We do the same with the seatbelt, 17mm. Once again, making sure that this all stays together. Bolt, washer, retaining washer. As I said earlier, seam on the inside here. And then just be mindful of how this should be. Once again, removing this seatbelt from the guide. It's quite helpful to fold this seat right the way forward to gain access to the bolts at the back on this side. And we undo these rear bolts. And move the seat back to access the front bolts under the carpet flaps. And this seat can now be removed. And note that the spacers, as I said, are at the back on the passenger side left seat in the UK. So with everything stripped out now, seat wise, I can now get down to hoovering this carpet on it and under it really thoroughly. I think you'll agree that's quite a straightforward seat removal. Okay, so I'm all done hoovering. I haven't shown too much of that as nobody wants to watch a man hoovering a car. Well, there may be those that do for some strange reason. But here we go. So it's all very clean. Everywhere's been wiped down with wet wipes. It always amazes me once you start tearing these cars down, just how well built they are. I mean, this is a really solid car. They feel so strong and so well put together compared to other small cheap cars. This here, I'm thinking, would probably be the airbag wiring if it had a side airbag. So that's just redundant and just sits under there. And this little cross here, that's obviously where the wiring comes through. I'm thinking that the airbag wiring would also have come through there had it needed to. They seem to make one loom for a lot of these cars. I guess it cuts down on cost and you just plug the bits in if it needs it. And then I guess the rest of it depends on how the vehicle's coded. It's now time to get the seats back in the car. Now ordinarily I would give these seats a clean while they're out, but we are getting to the end of the summer now and it would depend on the weather being nice and warm for them to be able to dry out, and unfortunately that's not a luxury we can guarantee now in the UK. This seat, it's a bit grubby around here. I hope it's just tea or coffee or food. I just think what else that could be in that position. I always think it's a good idea to clean these areas of the seat while the seat's out, because they do get quite dusty, and we'll never have accessibility as good as this again. So on the passenger side, let's begin with the spacers. Get the spacers in the front. And now it's time just to bolt these seats back in. And once again, where there's a spacer, it's the long bolt, and where there isn't, it's the short. Starting on the passenger side, short bolts at the front. Don't cross thread them because the thread's actually in the floor of the car. That would be a massive headache. And we tighten both these seat bolts at the front of the car. And also the rear. And now refit the seatbelt assembly. And thread it back through the guide. Moving round to the driver's side, so first of all we reclip the loom to the seat. Remember the wiring loom passes over this bar. Reconnect this connector here and plug the loom clip back into the seat. Long bolts at the front with the spacers. Short bolts here at the back without the spacers. Final tightening at the back. And at the front. Refit the seatbelt and tighten, and refit the belt into the guide. It's all done, and I'm very happy with the result. There was a lot of hair in here, and I'm guessing that the previous owner must have had some kind of hound or other animal, but it's all gone now and it's looking great. I've got right down into all the nooks and crannies without the seats being in the way, cleaned under the carpets as you've seen. Really happy with the result. As you can see, it's not difficult to get these seats out, just a few precautions that I've gone over in the video. If you want to deep clean your smart interior, I hope this video is of help to you. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.